WrestleMania 25 was in the rear-view mirror and WWE was set to shake things up once again. The state of the company at the time was comfortably in the PG role. There was no inconsistencies with their image and it was straight up PG. It wasn't in any sort of way edgy. WWE's ratings at this point were very strong, mostly because of the Randy Orton storyline. It brought even more interest to the show, and Raw since then has never been as successful from a rating standpoint. WWE was starting to push some of the younger talent harder and featuring them on a more consistent base, and this draft marked the start for many, such as Jack Swagger and The Miz. So right now, let's get into it. This is the April 13th, 2009 Raw episode. I'm going to talk about everything. It's an episode review. Alright, let's get into it. Batista kicked off the show. This was in light of his return the previous week, and he was about to talk about Randy Orton. Batista had been out for about 4 months at the hands of Randy Orton, and he was seeking retribution. The Animal was extremely grateful for getting the chance to return in front of the fans, but he was all about retribution. That humble feeling quickly disappeared like he did in 2010 because his mind was on Randy Orton. He refused to waste time and called them out. Now, Orton didn't budge. Batista was about to walk to the back when Shane O'Mac came out. He wanted to pay back the favor instead due to his own problems with the Viper, but of course Triple H had to get involved because similar to both men, Randy Orton pissed him off. The game went into detail about how Orton may have taken him out, but with him, he tried to take out his own wife. Triple H was damned if anybody else got to Orton other than himself. Then Vicky Guerrero came out. Raw GM, by the way, I'm sure they'd be booing her harder today because they were booing her here. She told them that they can wait until Backlash, but if they're so impatient, then only one of them will get the chance. As for tonight, it's going to be a handicap match. Orton's away, so Legacy's at a disadvantage. The stipulation of the match goes if Legacy wins, nobody faces Randy Orton. Whoever gets the pinfall on the other side, though, is Orton's opponent. I don't got much to say about this segment. It's literally to set up the program, it's just basic stuff here. The first match of the show was between Rey Mysterio and Evan Bourne. Rey represents Raw and Bourne represents ECW. Winner gets a draft pick. Now, if you were watching back then, this was almost a dream match. Evan Bourne was flying through the clouds, hitting moves that were absolutely unusual in WWE, and he stood out. That moveset was fresh and slick, so facing Rey Mysterio was going to be big. Quick collar and elbow type into a feeling out process. Well, actually, the entire thing's a feeling out process. Bourne showed great athleticism early on before bumping into the barricade, and damn, he looked rough. Off the ropes, Rey runs into a spin kick, and this gives Bourne a near fall. He goes for the chin lock and displays his impressive moveset, and then he goes to the top but wastes too much time, leading to a Hurricanrana for another near fall. Bourne rebounds with a knee before running into the 619 1, 2, 3. Damn, was that short. These two tried to make the most out of it, especially Evan Bourne, who was almost desperate to stand out in front of a wider audience. He sold the moves great, made Rey's moves look devastating, but man, it's unfortunate they never wrestled longer. It wasn't going to happen here because WWE back then didn't really have long TV matches. Add to that, it was a draft show. I kind of wish these two actually faced off on a pay-per-view with like 10, 12, 15 minutes because I'm definitely sure it would have been match of the night if these two faced off. Especially if it was 2009 Rey Mysterio. They play the randomizer and boom! It's MVP, the United States Champion. He's moving to Raw. Okay, MVP had been on SmackDown the entire time, so him moving to Raw, it was a fresh face for Monday nights, and at face value, it felt like it was going to benefit him because there was a lot of opponents he hadn't faced on Monday nights, but it ended up being a run where I feel like more could have been achieved. The next match was between Kane and the Brian Kendrick, Raw versus SmackDown. Kendrick slapped Kane, tries to hide behind Ezekiel Jackson, who at this point had lost a mysterious stat, so he got his ass kicked easily. Sliced bread wasn't to be, and Kane hits the choke slam for the win. When I saw that Brian Kendrick came out, I knew how this would end. The randomizer once again, and it's The Big Show. The commentary sold it like The Rock was back, and for the first time in 3 years, The Big Show is back on Monday nights. He had a lot of opponents to face here, such as John Cena once again, Triple H, even Randy Orton if they wanted to do that. Plus a lot of mid-carders such as MVP, Mark Henry, a bunch of guys, it's to give him a fresh change more so than anything. They try to give him different types of opponents to make look good, so it was time for him to move to Raw and do that on Monday nights. In the back, Randy Orton barges into Vicky's office and complains about how he might face Triple H and how it's a non-title match as well. Chavo tried to get involved, but knew his place. Vicky fixed things and said that if Rhodes and DiBiase win, it's going to be a 3-on-1 handicap match next week. Jack Swagger, meanwhile, told John Cena that champ is here. Cena called him an All-American, missing the other American moniker, and he started making fun of him before calling him an All-American jackass. The whole point in this was for Cena to teach him that he's got a lot coming to him, yet he's worried about his nickname. Cena said that he's going to teach him a lesson in respect. The next match was a 6-women's tag team match. Michelle McCool, Maryse, and Natalya representing SmackDown faced Molina, Mickie James, and Kelly representing Raw. The women get into it before the referee sets things straight. Michelle quickly goes on the attack, but her efforts don't mean much in the long run, and Mickie fights back. Nice Hurricanrana on the corner, and James quickly runs into a boot for the loss. Now I was kind of confused, but then I realized, hey, this is the 2009 Divas division. They'd be losing matches from snap mares. This is like taking a super AA on the men's side for them here, because that's how they were booked. One punch, one dropkick would end the match here. That's how the Divas division was back then. The draft randomizer, and it's Molina. She's the one that's going to be moving to SmackDown, and it was a much needed change because she had been on Raw for about 3 years, I think, at this point. Plus, the Women's Championship had never been seen on SmackDown, so there's that. With that said, the next match was champion versus champion. John Cena representing Raw faces Jack Swagger representing ECW. Those last 3 letters in the sentence tell you who's winning this, especially the fact that his opponent is John Cena. This match was worth 2 draft picks as well. Swagger quickly showed off his skills and had a high sense of arrogance. Cena couldn't really do much and decided to go for the shoulder tackles already. While he didn't match the wrestling skill, he made up for it with his aggression. Back in the ring, Swagger finds an opening and delivers a clubbing blow before slowly targeting the neck. Cena's fresh off a neck surgery a few months ago as well, so that's why he was going for it. That's tying into the story here. He locked in the full Nelson, and at this point the kids were giving it their all in supporting the champ. He channels this energy and suddenly goes on a hot streak. Swagger found a way to put a stop right before the commercial break, and at this point it was very back and forth. Swagger struggled to successfully hit a DDT here, but he manages to score the high knee on the ropes and another near fall. Out the ropes, Swagger catches Cena once again and hits a power slam. As he goes for the slam in the corner, Cena catches him and hits the AA for the victory. Decent match. That's what happens when you give the wrestlers some time. The reason why I watched this match, I thought it was decent, is because Jack Swagger showed up. He was in there with John Cena, the top guy in WWE at this point, and he was working hard. He showed that he had the skill, the wrestling skill, to face a main event player like John Cena. So when you look at it from this time period with the 2009 sunglasses, you can feel like Swagger has an upside because he knows how to wrestle. They're pushing him as the ECW champion. You feel something's there about him. Like right now, we're like, oh, he amounted to nothing. But when you look back then, it's like, hey, maybe there is something about this Jack Swagger guy. The fact that he showed up with John Cena here and had a good match is telling of his skill. Because at this point, Jack Swagger was not bad for a wrestler. He was pretty good, especially in 2009 WWE. Matt Hardy ends up being the first pick for Monday nights. He's all hyped as if he's going to get a title shot. He didn't, of course. And Triple H, the WWE champion, follows up. So that's a huge pick. Triple H is back on Raw. Looking back, I kind of wish he remained on SmackDown, but there's a reason why the SmackDown main event scene was so open. It's because Triple H left. It allowed for others to take advantage. Edge decides to attack Cena at this point, screws up, finds himself in a position, but manages to run away. In the back, the Viper motivates Legacy to get the job done, and he wanted another strategy. And he's like, oh, I want to know what you guys are going to do. And they're like, hey, it's simple. We're going to pair their egos together. That's their weakness. The next match was between Santino Marella representing Raw and the Great Khali representing SmackDown. At this point, Santino knew that he was finished, but right before the match began, Beth Phoenix interrupted. So these two had a long-term story with Santino involved, and she revealed that if Santino loses this match, it's not only for a draft pick, but Santino features on the kiss cam with Khali. The most 2009 WWE thing ever. Santino's running, getting thrown around. Before he knew it, he took the chop, and SmackDown wins a draft pick. There's not much to say about the match. It was literally a squash match with the Great Khali winning. Randomizers on, and it's CM Punk. Todd Grisham is more hyped here than he was when Christian returned, and for the first time ever, CM Punk was going to wrestle on Friday nights. I'd say this worked very well into his favor, especially because he had the Money in the Bank briefcase. If he remained on Raw, I just don't see him getting pushed over Triple H, Randy Orton, and eventually John Cena coming back into the main event scene. It just wouldn't have happened because we've seen his time on Raw. It was not like noteworthy, even though he was world champion. It was a bit noteworthy, but it was not entirely noteworthy is what I'm trying to say. So it was a good move for him. The next match was between The Miz representing ECW and Kofi Kingston representing Raw. Okay. Collar and elbow tie up early on. Kofi quickly shows off his athleticism and had this burst of momentum that had to be stopped by a distraction by John Morrison. The Miz starts wearing down Kofi, and at this point, the match is very dry because The Miz was doing work. Kofi tries to build momentum and almost scores the victory with a crossbody, but Miz counters in the build and manages to hit a hybrid of the skull-crushing finale. Leg sweep and the boom drop from Kofi, but it's still not enough. Miz evades trouble in paradise, but almost falls victim to a roll-up. Then Morrison decides to try and take advantage of the referee, but he's caught, and Kofi wins the match, and Raw another draft pick. The match is starting to get good, like I'm not gonna lie, there were some pretty boring parts, especially when Miz was trying to slow down the pace. It picks up though, and it had to end in a DQ. So John Morrison costs his friend the match, and in turn basically ended the partnership because Miz was drafted to Raw. They had a look of despair on their faces when Miz decides to make a name for himself with the reality checks. So this was a nice moment. Miz gets to build some momentum from turning on his partner and starting a new chapter in his career, and the move to Raw was much needed because ECW at this point was finished, and he had been around for 2 years. So it worked in his favor. The next match is a 15-man battle royal. Raw versus ECW versus SmackDown. The only true superstars in this match were Big Show and Edge. 2 draft picks for the winning team. They're out here dropping each other with strikes, and ECW was quickly disrespected because 2 of their guys were thrown out early. Right after I see this, half of the ring was empty. Big Show and Mark Henry were tossing out everybody in sight to the point where only 1 SmackDown star remained. MVP was thrown out like a jobber, Finlay, Crime Time, and so remained 3. Edge was too distracted at this point, and once he realized what's up, he took a chokeslam. This worked greatly in his favor because Big Show and Mark Henry were destroying each other on the apron. Big Show overpowered Henry and dropped him with a KO punch, and he set his sights towards Edge. And this man had no other thought in his mind other than throwing Edge. And this cost him because he ran and got the rope pulled from under him to get eliminated. Now, I shill for battle royals all the time, but this one was weak as hell. Everyone was thrown out in a minute, no drama to it, and it wasn't thought out well. The first draft pick was Kane. Edge was almost pissing himself over this revelation, and Kane as a draft pick is similar to Big Show. As for the second draft pick, it was Chris Jericho. Kane as a draft pick was to make things fresher. He obviously wasn't going to do too much. Jericho, on the other hand, was a huge change because since his return, he has been featured entirely on Raw and did a great job of establishing himself. The ballpark was a little more open for him to potentially become champion, and that's one thing I loved about this era of SmackDown. The opportunities weren't stuck with 3 men, it was with 7 or 8 men. The next match was between Christian representing ECW and Shelton Benjamin representing SmackDown. Shelton quickly went with a T-bone suplex, low boot, and the urgency from Benjamin was on display here. This guy was going all out. Christian was much more traditional about his approach, and that wasn't working because Shelton was wrestling like he was going to earn a time bonus or something. Body slam and Shelton was going to work. He was doing well here, but once again, he was far too overzealous, and this opened way for Christian to make a short-lived comeback that concluded after Benjamin hit a backbreaker. He was doing superhero stuff here, but his own aggression and urgency cost him, and Christian hit the kill switch to give ECW a pick. So Christian goes through all of that, destroys himself in the process, and ends up being Vladimir Kozlov. So ECW was like going to GameStop, selling their console, and in exchange receiving a low sum. That's basically what it was. Like, ECW were always getting scammed out of stuff because it was the C show. It was the number 3 show in WWE. Matt Striker was trying to assure himself that this was an amazing pick, which I think it was decent at the time because Vladimir Kozlov had a bit of a push and he needed more experience, so going to ECW was going to help him more. The match itself was nice. It was pretty short, but I liked the story of Shelton Benjamin being his own enemy. He could do amazing things out of this world, but his timing is always what costs him, and here that is the exact same thing that happened. Triple H once again wanted to explain that Orin's his. Batista understood the assignment that was every man for himself, and that's the segment. The next match was between CM Punk of Raw and Matt Hardy of SmackDown. Collar and elbow into a roll-up, and both men were very aggressive to earn a slight advantage, even attempting their finishers. Hardy got the edge by dropping Punk in the corner and then hits a sidewalk slam which gives him a near fall. Punk's ribs were hurting and Hardy wasted no time in targeting them. Punk's lethal strikes and knees were giving him an edge to turn things around, and he hits the high knee in the corner, followed by the Bulldog, and at this point, it was all CM Punk. Just when Matt drops him with the side effect, Jeff Hardy runs in and gives his brother a beating, so Raw won a pick. The match itself was very average, like half of the matches on the show. The time was going against it. Maryse turned out to be the pick bringing the Divas Championship to Raw, and it made sense since Molina with the women's title went to SmackDown. The next match was between Chris Jericho of SmackDown and Tommy Dreamer of ECW. ECW's night was absolutely horrendous. These guys were having everyone taken away from them. Dreamer with the edge early on. He had a consistent string of moves, and the ECW icon was doing well for himself and took the punishment but fought through and almost stole the victory as well. He hit the lowdown for yet another near fall, but he screwed himself over by going to the top while Jericho had him scouted. Why? Because he hit the code breaker and SmackDown gets the draft pick. The match was very average, like I don't really got much to say about it. It was just there, and that's half of the matches on the show, there's not really much to say about them. Okay, who's it gonna be? The last draft pick of the night was gonna be Rey Mysterio. He's got the Intercontinental Championship as well, and Rey going back to SmackDown is cool. He's always meant to be on the show, and looking back on his time on Raw, it was missing a lot. He didn't have the best set of feuds, whereas his time on SmackDown from here on was very strong. Plus, in the ring was staring at him his future opponent, Chris Jericho. So after this, they were going to go on to have an amazing set of matches. Some of the best set of matches I've ever seen in WWE. They were that damn good. And the main event, Legacy faced Triple H, Batista, and Shane McMahon. If somebody from the Games team wins, they get the chance to face Orton. If Rhodes and DiBiase win, the loser faces him in a handicap match. These men wasted no time going on the attack. Shane with the high tackle for a near fall, and as he's starting to get into things, Batista tags in. He's getting work done when Triple H tags in himself. So there was some tension between the two sides. The Animal was pretty worried about Triple H winning the match, and this gave way to Legacy. It was clear that the champion's mind was on other things at this point rather than the match itself. DiBiase was battering Triple H, and as risky as it could have been, he wanted to tag in somebody. Rhodes comes in, he continues where DiBiase left off, and Batista and Shane were craving the opportunity to enter the match. Batista's in, he has a burst of momentum and drops both men. Shane gets involved and the Animal's all fired up. He has the Batista bomb when Shane McMahon breaks it up. They're about to get into it when Triple H tags in, and their drama was costing them. These three were about to fight, and back in the ring, Triple H hits the pedigree for the victory. It was a very intense few moments, but then Randy Orton came out, and they all directed their attention towards him. So there it is. That's the match. Triple H vs. Randy Orton was going to happen the following week, 6 days before Backlash. Alright, that match was decent. It's just very average. It's just one of those matches you see where they don't do anything wrong. There's nothing extraordinary about it, and you can't really say much about it itself. And it was all about advancing the story of Triple H vs. Randy Orton happening next week, and all that stuff with Batista, Shane, and the game himself. So yeah. Alright, that's the 2009 draft episode. I don't feel it felt as big as it should have. The 2008 and 7 episodes were way better. Not the draft picks. The draft picks themselves were strong. There was a lot of matches, but it didn't hit hard as it should have. Like, I remember the 2008-7 episodes had a lot of matches in there. There was a lot of star power representing these matches. That said, the draft was strong, I'd say. The selections for SmackDown and Raw. Raw got Triple H again. I always used to wish John Cena would go to SmackDown, but he just never did. Instead, Triple H goes back to Raw. Rey goes back to SmackDown, which was cool. Chris Jericho to SmackDown was nice. I'd say it did change the complexion of WWE for a bit, especially on SmackDown. You know, SmackDown felt very, very different when Chris Jericho, Rey Mysterio, CM Punk, all these guys went there. It felt much stronger. But yeah, the episode wasn't as strong as I thought it was. It was way weaker than 2007 and 8, but the draft selections were strong. They weren't as strong as 2008. You know, 2008 was very evenly balanced. There was something cool about it. Alright, what you guys think of the 2009 draft? Please comment down below. And that's it for this video. Make sure you hit the pedigree on the like button, perhaps the RKO on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.